Blog Talk Radio.
All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Golf Talk Live. I'm your host, Ted Odorico, and this very interesting Thursday, March 16th of 2017, of course, happens to be, as many of you know that tune into the program, happens to be my birthday. So I'm, of course, celebrating my birthday today. So thank you to all of the folks out there that reached out over the last, actually 24 hours. Some of you actually were a little earlier and jumped the gun yesterday. But thank you for all the well wishes, Nat, that you've been sending me through social media and text and email and so forth. So thank you very much. Welcome to the show. This is Golf Talk Live, and normally I'm live from 6 to 8 p.m. Central every Thursday evening. But tonight we're going to have a little shorter show tonight, mainly because we're not going to have a Coach's Corner panel discussion this week. I'm going to be jumping right into my guest interview for the first hour of the show, and then I'll be ending it sometime, maybe an hour or maybe a little bit longer than an hour, depending on how things go. But my very special guest that's going to be joining me this evening is Alecia Larsen. She is an LPGA teaching professional and the founder and president of Graditude Golf. And she's going to be talking about a book that she has recently published, and she's the author of this book, of course, The Missing Link, The Powerful Role of Self-Talk in the Mind Game of Golf. A very interesting read. For those of you that haven't got a copy, we'll tell you a little bit later on in the broadcast how you can get your hot little hands on. This is a very, very well-written book, and lots of great tips and that in here to help you along the way. But for those of you that are, as I said, joining me live here on Thursday night, obviously you know how to get here, but for those that don't normally tune in, easiest way to find me is to go to blogtalkradio.com, type in Golf Talk Live, and that will take you to the main page on the network. And of course, Thursday evenings, the show, as I mentioned, is live, normally from 6 to 8 p.m. Central. But for some reason, if you're not able to join me during the live broadcast, not to worry. You can just scroll down that page at blogtalkradio.com/Golf Talk Live, and you can see the different shows in the on-demand section. So they're all auto-recorded during the broadcast, so you can scroll down there. And if you missed us live on any particular evening, you can scroll down. Or if you heard an interview before and maybe you want to hear it again, maybe there's some information in there that you wanted to talk about or amongst your friends or associates, or maybe you just want to share the program, go to blogtalkradio.com/Golf Talk Live and share that link with as many people as possible. Obviously, we, being an online radio broadcast, we reach a far-reaching global audience, literally from every country that you can imagine, our listeners tuning into this network. So I appreciate it very much for all of the listeners and also all of the guests that coming out. I actually had some interesting chatter, if you will, on Facebook while I was thanking the many people that had wished me well today on my birthday. Managed to make some great connections today on Facebook for some future guests that are going to come on the show. So I'm really excited about that. One particularly, I'm not going to tell you who it is at this time, but a gentleman from back in my hometown, or home area, if you will, of Burlington, Ontario, Canada. He's going to be joining us. He's been very active in golf over the years. In fact, he had his own television show for many years on golf. And we share, of course, some very common interests. So he's going to be coming on the show here in actually a couple of months' time. So I'm very excited about that. But and also, if you want to call in anytime during the live broadcast, you're welcome to do so by calling in area code 646-716-4667. Or you can email me at ted.golftalklive@gmail.com anytime during or after the program if you have any comments or questions about the show. Or maybe you know somebody in the golf industry that you'd like to have me reach out to and get a guest on the show. Again, reach out to me at ted.golftalklive@gmail.com. And as most of you know, of course, I do update every week on social media. particularly on Facebook and Twitter, but also on LinkedIn as well, about the show and who my guests are going to be. So just look at those different areas. Go to Facebook, type in Golf Talk Live blog. That will take you to the Golf Talk Live page, or you can type in my name personally, Ted Odorico, and I post all of the information on my personal page as well, and the same thing respectively on LinkedIn. On Twitter, my Twitter handle is Ted and Buck CEO. CEO is in capital letters. Thank you for all of the recent followers there as well. And obviously, I post all the information for the shows. And don't forget to tune in every Tuesday morning from 9 to 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's 9 to 10 a.m. Eastern. On that hour, I host along with my good friend, LPGA professional Cindy Miller, who is the co-host of that show as well, the Women of Golf Show on the blogtalkradio.com network. So make sure you tune into us there, and we would love for you to call in or to reach out to us as well. Her email address is cindy@cindymillergolf.com, and mine, as I mentioned, is ted.golftalklive@gmail.com. As I mentioned, my very special guest tonight is Alecia Larsen. She is a Class A LPGA teacher professional, as well as the founder and president of Graditude Golf, and the author of a book that we're going to talk about tonight, The Missing Link, The Powerful Role of Self-Talk in the Mind Game of Golf. And let me just tell you a little bit more about her, and then I'm going to bring her on because I see that she's waiting here in the wings. Alecia, her vision of Gratitude Golf and her coaching golf instruction is to equip golfers to tap into their full potential by discovering their individual gifts. With specific tools to enhance their products, she encourages them to stay focused on positive achievements and become aware of and work through any obstacles that may be keeping them from reaching their goals. On the lesson T, there is an important emphasis on the fundamentals of the game and specific mechanics, but also includes an essential combination of the mental approach of their golf game and life. She coaches beginners, intermediates, and advanced players, and currently coaches all spectrums, men, women, and junior golfers, as well as students. A whole plethora of experience. Let me just read you a few of them. She was the 2014 LPGA Midwest Section Teacher of the Year. She was also voted as one of the top 50 teachers in the country by Golf Digest Golf for Women magazine in 2002, certified positive self-talk trainer and speaker, as well as a sports psychologist certified in emotional toughness. We'll talk to her a little bit about that as well. Many, many other accolades as well, just too many to mention here. Otherwise, I won't have any time to talk to my special guest. But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please let me welcome Alecia Larsen to the show.
Thank you,
Good
Ted.
evening and welcome, Alecia.
Well, thank you, Ted. I appreciate it.
Well, you have so many accolades. Like I said, it would take us the first hour of the show just to read them all out. So I just wanted to highlight a few of them. But the main thing, of course, I wanted to plug the book and to mention the fact that you're a fellow golf professional. So welcome to the show, Alecia. I'm excited to have you on tonight.
Well, I'm really excited to be here, and I must first say happy birthday. I hope you had a great day.
Thank you. You know what? It's been fun. It's been a perfect day. Nobody bothered me. I've been answering messages and things like that, and I'm actually going away this weekend to see a musical in Atlanta that I'm very excited about. My girlfriend and I are going to go and see that together. So that's what I'm planning for my birthday. But tonight I'm just going to have a nice quiet evening. A few phone calls I've made already, but other than that, very relaxed. And again, thank you to all the other folks out there that have wished me all the best today. I appreciate it very much. All right, Alecia, the first obvious question I want to ask you before we get into sort of some of the specifics about the book, what was sort of the reasoning behind, why did you want to write this specific book? What was it about the language and the ideas behind the book that sort of struck a chord with you?
Well, I had been thinking about writing a book for actually quite a few years and talking about it and just never acted on it. But I was taking notes as I was on the lesson tee and thinking about things that I might want to include in the book. And as I accumulated all that stuff, it kind of dawned on me that the stories and the situational things that were happening right before my eyes on the lesson tee were affirming what I was really wanting, the message I really wanted to get across to the masses, because we're teaching the masses and we're trying to make sure everybody's enjoying the game. So I accumulated years of notes and that sort of thing. And then when I met Dr. Helmstetter, it was that's when things kind of came to fruition. And he said, I mentioned that I was really, I really want to write this book. And he's like, well, why don't you? And so he kind of guided me and, encouraged me to make it anecdotal and tell them about stories, because he said people really want to know how you got started in golf. And in the beginning, it wasn't going to be, as anecdotal as it turned out to be, but he said, I really think that's the first step in people getting to know you a little better and getting to know you through your stories of how self-talk affected your golf game in your life, positively or negatively. And that's kind of how it started.
Well said. Well, let's take a step back then before we get right into the book and just talk about. I mean, I've sort of highlighted a few of your accolades, Nat, again, you have a whole list of many great accomplishments. But tell us, just for the listeners, I like to do this with all of my guests, especially if they've never been on the show before, just to give a little bit of an overview of how you got into golf. When did you start playing golf, and what was sort of the motives or reasoning that you got into to playing the game?
Yeah, it was, as I mentioned in the book, the first chapter title was "We All Start Somewhere," and that was, it really means that we all start playing golf somewhere, and if we're liking the game at some point in time, we all have our own little individual kind of unique stories that will encompass our beginning. And mine happened to be I was very athletic, and it was just my dad, and we started out at a little lake cabin, and just happened to be there was little sand greens in the back, right in our back door of our cabin was I think it was the number 3 tee box. So we could literally just walk from our cabin if we wanted to play a few holes and just go out and play casually, and my brothers and I would go out, or my dad, and we would just go play, and that's really truly how I got started, is playing on sand greens and at a little cabin in the state of North Dakota where I grew up and was raised.
Wow. And it's interesting because a lot of the guests that I've had on the show over the years have had very similar stories, either a parent, normally in most cases, not every case, but, their father maybe got them involved in golf, or other siblings that were active athletically. Maybe they went out as youngsters and played together. What sort of transpired, or what stage of your journey, if you will, did you decide, okay, I want to get in and I want to teach and do something to give back to the game that's given you a lot?
Yeah, that's a great question. It actually was a little bit later in my life, because my first love was actually basketball, and so I got a full ride to play basketball in college, and so I didn't play college golf, but I really dove right into, after basketball was over, I dove right into, really playing amateur golf at a national level. So I was playing with a lot of girls that actually, they ended up going on to the LPGA tour and playing, but I just wanted to play highly competitive national amateur golf. I won the state tournament in North Dakota twice before I felt like I was ready for going out to play nationally. But I got a job at a golf course and on the grounds crew, and so I was working with one of my basketball teammates, and I happened to meet my first husband, who was a member there, and we just started playing golf a lot, and we just kept playing golf, and then we ended up getting married, and we traveled all over the country. And I had, an opportunity to get some lessons from some of the greatest teachers. There are some passed away and some still alive. And
right.
And so my first husband really launched me into the golf seriousness of golf. And then when we had children, and I still loved golf so much, and we ran the junior programs at our little private club at 9-hole private club at our hometown. And I decided that, the tour and traveling wasn't going to be for me, because I had a family, so I wanted to stay in the organization, in the LPGA, because I loved it so much. And so I decided to go to the membership, teaching and club professional membership part of it, and the business side of it, instead of the touring playing side of it. And the rest is pretty much what they call history.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because, obviously a lot of the LPGA players over the years that have gone on to have successful careers as players, many of them, not all of them, but many of them do come back and teach afterwards. But there are also a good vast number of people within the LPGA organization that maybe didn't necessarily play out on the tour at all or very long, but went right into the teaching aspect. So I guess it really depends on where your passion is and what it is. But I got to give kudos where kudos is due. I think the LPGA is a fantastic, as you may or may not know, on Tuesday mornings, I host another show, The Women of Golf, with Cindy Miller. And, we've had the pleasure of interviewing some great ladies, both junior and senior, many from the Legends Tour. And it's just amazing how hard these women are and how much they give back to the game itself, and it's just phenomenal. I'm in awe every time we speak to some of these great women that come on the shows, just because of how hard they are at what they do and how hard they work. So, and to you as well. You do a lot. You've been teaching for years, and you've given so much to the game. And I really found this book very interesting. And I want to just go back because you brought him up and talked about Dr. Helmstetter for a second. He wrote the foreword in your book, and I got to say he described what the book is really about to a T. How did you discover the connection between self-taught and how the brain responds? What was sort of your epiphany, if you will, that you came to sort of that realization? Was it fairly early on before you got into the book, or where in your career did you realize that self-talk was important?
Well, as I kept teaching, I realized that self-talk, the portion of my competitive years when I was really hard on myself was really what kept me and held me back from reaching my potential. When I could reflect on that and realize that, I think that was for whatever reason that happened, I didn't have a mind game, teacher, if you will. I had a swing coach, and, they told me to think positive and, you can't get mad and all that stuff. And there's coping mechanisms that we need to learn how to do that. That's a skill that we learn. We can be told that and we know better. We know not to get upset and stuff. So it's one of those things where I realized early on that self-talk was, important. But then as I taught more and as I began to realize that was the very reason that stopped me from, and the obstacle that kept me from reaching my goals, it became more clear and clearer as my career went on. And then when I met Dr. Helmstetter, it just all came to a full circle then at that point in time. And I realized, I'm like, wow, that is truly what happened to me, and I need to spread that message in the golfing world because I never imagined that I'd meet Dr. Helmstetter and have the opportunity to have him write my foreword for my book and all the great things that he's given me and the knowledge of self-talk. And he's given his 40 years of his life to researching the importance of self-talk. And I'm so lucky that I ran into him and that he would give me the opportunity to do this, to share with the golfing world what I have experienced and what I know and what I want everybody else to know.
Well said. And the other thing, too, that I noticed throughout the book, and you get into specifics about it, but you talk about why the difference between those that talk about what they want to do and others that are they're actual doers. Explain what you mean by that. And you sort of talk about that in one of the chapters a little bit about how some of us out there talk about what they want to do, and then there's others that actually just go out and do it. Explain what you mean by that.
Yeah, we can talk about what we like. If I say, I'm going to work on not getting upset today, going out and playing in my round, but if I it's the old cliche of you can talk the talk, but you have to walk the walk, and you must learn how to in the moment of being in control of your emotions or your emotions control you kind of thing. You have to be able to know how to turn that off and on and be able to just like Dr. Shad said one time. It was a great just kind of a demonstration when I became certified about. He sat in a chair and he said, we all have to face fear. And none of us like it, but when I'm facing it, he just kind of stops and just lets fear kind of enter, and he embraces it and calmly just says, I know you're here, and I'm dealing with you right now, and I can feel your presence in my body, but I'm going to let you go very shortly. You're going to kind of come in one door and out the other really fast, and so okay, bye, kind of thing. So it was like. We all have to be able to kind of do that, on the course. It's hard. You can't just go up to somebody who just took a quadruple bogey or a 10 or something, double figures and say, breathe. You have to learn. Right. You can't, by that time it's too late actually. You've got to be able to monitor that a little bit better. But that's what I'm really trying to teach my students to do, just, stay in control and stay calm and, what happened. But I know it's hard. It's a hard skill to learn, but yet it can be learned for sure.
How do you help? Let's talk about students for a second. We can teach them all, all they need to know about the golf swing and the mechanics and so on and so forth. But then they have to be able to put it into practice. And this is where I'm guessing you found that self-talk has really helped. Again, it's more than just, positive thinking. I mean, that's great and that's important. But we have to be able to put all the knowledge that we've learned on the lesson tee from our coach or instructors, we have to be able to put it into practice. And obviously when we go out and play in a tournament situation, we've got to, we've got to step up and do it. So how do you help your students go from that transition of, okay, I've learned everything here in the lesson tee, now I got to take it out in the golf course? What do you say to them to get them mentally prepared so that when they get out in the golf course, they're not sort of getting into a panic mode and saying, well, what did she say out back there on the tee? I can't remember now. How do you get them to engage their mental talk, if you will, or their self-talk while they get out in the golf course?
Yeah, there's a couple things. I mean, first of all, I'm really, it's really important to me to make my students self-sufficient and empower them with the knowledge of how to get themselves back on track, with their swing. And then secondly, you want to make sure that, while they're practicing staying in control on the practice tee as well. Because if they, whatever they're rehearsing, when they're practicing it just gives them permission to take it out on the golf course and say, okay, well, I got angry, frustrated on the lesson tee or on the practice tee when I was practicing. And so that's their behavior that they were repeating, and it's about repetition. So if they're rehearsing, getting angry and frustrated on the lesson tee, they'll just take that out to the course, and then that's their game. So I really try to make sure that they know that they, what you're rehearsing on the practice tee or the lesson tee is something that you're gonna be in control out there as well when you go out and try play around a golf competitively or just casually. So always being in control is one of the things, and embracing the diversity of the ups and downs of golf, having a bad shot and knowing, just kind of accepting that. Because I say, if you can expect it, you can accept it. And that's really, if I expect that I'm going to have some bad bounces and some drives that aren't going to be good, and gosh, I like to teach my students all about good misses. So we want to have good misses, and, maybe I hit 10% of the shots that I really like, but boy, the rest of them were good misses, and I scored okay, and so if I expect, some bad shots and some less than desirable outcomes, then I can accept them a bit better, and then that helps me mentally to stay a little more kind of, calm and just not get, on that slippery slope of getting too upset about anything.
Right. It's interesting because many times on the other show in the morning, Cindy and I, we'll be talking about different things, and one of her issues that she talks about quite often, obviously she has the skill to be out there and play, and she's played, competitive for a number of years, both on the LPGA and obviously now on the Legends Tour. But, she certainly has the physical game to play with some of the best out there. But a lot of times she says that internal dialogue, that other Cindy comes out in the golf course with her, and there's that constant battle. And I can say that without any great fear that she's going to lambaste me next Tuesday on the show, because she said it many times herself. So I'm not worried about any backlash. But talk about that a little bit, because there's a good example. There's somebody that's played at a high level, that obviously has the gift and the talents to be out there and play with the best. But even she struggles. You've obviously worked with some high caliber players. What have you found the differences between a player like a Cindy Miller and others that you've come across out on tour to some of the amateurs? What's the difference that goes on in their head as opposed to some of the amateurs that you might be working with?
Well, I don't know if there's a lot of, really a big differences. I mean, there's still that, you can put it under whatever umbrella you want with, fear or doubt or just, lack of confidence for that day, or you just don't feel right, on that day, or you haven't felt good, or it just depends on the person. But, I always tell my students, look, I want you to be your own best friend out there. When I write in a book and when I personalize and sign a book, I'll say my wish for you is that you'll always be your own best friend, both on and off the course, because, both of them are going to be influential on both, your golf life and your life is going to be, it's influenced on both sides. So I want you to be your own best friend while you're on the course and while you're off the course. And so when you have somebody, I always tell my students to try to find the other person that's going to be that cheerleader. Like you have kind of like two people. You have the person playing golf, and you have the person that you have to kind of, in your head, you have to create this other person in there that's talking to you, that's telling you it's okay, and, just keep yourself. It's like the caddy. The caddy is going to always be affirming and supportive and giving you, let's go, it's all right, just make a good move at it, and it's good. I think this is a solid 8-iron, and they give you all the affirmation and confirmation that you've got the right club, and you've
right.
diagnosed it and analyzed it well, and then they rah-rah you and they say, okay, you're ready, buddy, and so they go. And that's kind of what the amateurs, when there's no caddy there, they have to do that themselves. They have to learn that skill. Because they certainly couldn't even imagine having a caddy there, standing there saying the things that they might be saying to themselves sometimes. Because I literally say in presentations when I've gone to golf shows, and I'm like, tell people, look, if I talk to you the way you talk to you, would you allow me to be your friend or your coach or your caddy? And invariably, everybody just a pin drops when I ask that question, because they all know the answer is no. And they kind of rehearse in their head, and they're like, man, if I let her tell me that I'm, a stupid idiot and I should have never hit it in the water, and wow, how could I do that, and I know better, and it's like on and on and on, and they're like, no, I would never allow you to say that to me. But I'm like, so then why is it okay that you say it to you? And so when you bring up that question and you really ask it in kind of a real context, it's, it's like, wow, I guess I need to, kind of upgrade my own talk in my own head. And I had one of my students say that she even heard, let's see, who was that she heard on the PGA Tour here at the Memorial. I can't recall who it was, but she goes, wow, even he has to, he said, this hole just gets me every time. He plays it bad every time. And she said, I heard him say that to his caddy, and she's like, Alecia, I can't believe it. The guy's in the PGA Tour, he's making millions, and he actually has to deal with this and fight it. And I'm like, yes, we all do. And so you have to be your own best friend out there.
Right, and that's why really I wanted to make that point about Cindy. Here's somebody that plays, has played on the professional tours, and I just want the folks that are tuning in that don't have that privilege to understand that yes, the professionals might hit the ball better and might score better than you or I, but at the same time, they have some of those internal dialogues the same as you and I have on occasion as well, and they're fighting those same demons, if you will, any given day. So they're just like you and I. I think sometimes we have a habit of putting people on a little bit of a pedestal, just like the young lady you were talking about a second ago, where she thought, well, wow, that person's a PGA player. I never thought they felt the same way, or they would think the same way.
Right. Right.
And this is where I think that we have to make them understand. And it draws to a bigger question, and I've always felt this way, and I was very glad that you've really focused your book around this. But you really talk about the connections between life and golf. And I've said this since I was knee-high to a grasshopper. And there's really a whole bunch of areas that we can talk about. But specifically, just, again, for the sake of the audience, let's sort of water it down a little bit. Give us an example of how you perceive it to be similar in golf to life.
Yeah, wow, we'd have to have another couple hours for that one, Ted. But it is. It's like it's like chunk it down really quickly.
That's why I said water it down, Alecia.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Well, let's see. I have found that it was actually quite stunning to me when I was becoming more aware of the fact that the issues that people are dealing with in their golf game, and I would hardly know them, and I might have just met them, and this is the first lesson I've ever given them. And I can think of 3 ladies that I had together, and they were, one was self-proclaimed a perfectionist, but yet she was really worried about people behind her playing, and she had to have a good perfect swing so she'd hit the ball good and not make them wait, and she wouldn't be in the way, and she just it was nerve-wracking. And so I just kind of just on a whim said, so are you a perfectionist? Oh yeah. And I said, how long do you think you've been that way? And she's like, oh, for as long as I can remember. And then she discloses a family issue with her father, that her father made her feel like she had to be a perfectionist. And here's a woman who's 60-something. And so it was like a life issue. Then it transitioned into her golf game. And so that was just intriguing to me, that all of these, there's so many situational stories I could share with that. But I believe that a lot of our thoughts and our patterns and, the things that we've done in life, and we have a tendency to start believing that, well, there's something in golf that I can't do, and there's really, everybody can achieve anything that they put their mind to. So it's one of those things where, I just start believing I can't hit a 3-wood off the fairway, and then you start believing that. But if I teach them to hit a 3-wood off the fairway, or I teach them something they believe they never could actually achieve, then if I talk to them and said, look, if they actually at the end of the day or at the end of the lesson walked away and said, man, what if I applied that to something in my business or at my workplace, that I just achieved something I never imagined, and then all of a sudden I did, and now I'm going to apply that to work. So there's so many interchangeable things with golf and life and the parallels that you can't think about this sport, and you can't think about. I couldn't think about this first book without having, because it was so many life scenarios that the self-talk in both of my golf and life. So I just came up with the idea of having one-word chapter titles and have it be really, you could go one way with golf or you could go one way with life, and it would be applicable to both. So. Right,
and it's very, by the way, it's very well written. I enjoyed reading it. Thank you for sending me a copy. It's interesting because, one of the things that I do when I teach, and I always forewarn, any students, obviously anyone that's worked with me for any length of time knows not to say this anymore, but, I'll ask them what areas do they fear the most, and what they don't realize is I'm actually setting them up a little bit. And I had somebody not too long ago that come out and say, well, Ted, I just hate going in the bunker. I just, it's my fear. And, it's the worst shot I have in the bag, and, so on and on. And then, by the way, what are we working on today? And I said, well, we're going in the bunker. That's where we're going to go. We're going to start, because it's, if you're hitting like you said, if you're hitting your 3-wood or your great, a great putter or whatever, why do I want to start somewhere where you've already become well accomplished? I want to start areas and help you overcome those fears, because you're exactly right. There's nothing worse than getting out in the golf course and automatically in your mind you see that shot that you fear the most coming up. Well, here I am in that fairway bunker. I can't do that. Or even on the tee, they'll see that bunker out there, or they'll see a situation out there that they know they're going to shy away from. So they're going to avoid that trouble, if you will, and ultimately end up getting themselves in even more trouble. That's a life lesson in itself. The other thing, too, that I think, is important about that is when we talk about successes and failures, and I want to read something real quick, and I thought this just hits it on the head. One of the other things I want to talk to you about was some of the great individual quotes that you have throughout the book, everybody from Muhammad Ali to Socrates. And this one here I want to read just sums it up all together. This was by Julie Andrews, of course. Persevering, failing 19 times and succeeding the 20th. I mean, does that not really epitomize life? I mean, how many times that we go through life where we fail at a multitude of things, but then, and it's just like hitting that perfect golf shot. We get out in the tee or we get out in the golf course and we have some bad shots, but we'll hit that one shot and that brings us back. Well, it's the same thing in life. That success will bring us back. Touched on that a little bit. How true is that statement that Julie talks about?
Oh, it's so true, and those quotes that I put in the book, I looked high and low for those, and then I've had many others, including those in addition to the ones I put in the book. But when I wanted to put them in, where they are placed, they are strategically placed in there, with a lot of really thought in the selection of them, because they're so important. As far as like just the idea of a golf shot and you wanting to avoid it and not being prepared and not and then I'm facing fear and I'm feeling vulnerable and all that stuff, that's I talked to this girl yesterday and I said, I'm sure people have heard about this, where we talk about baseball percentages, when somebody's batting in the 300s, they're just an awesome batter. I mean, and that's hitting 3 balls out of 10. And so, if you can think about just kind of conceptually, I'm not going to hit every golf shot perfect, because golf is not a game of perfect. And I just met with somebody a little while ago, and Dr. Bob Rotella, in this article that I gave her, said, if you're thinking about golf as being perfect and having to hit a perfect shot all the time, when golf is imperfect, then you
right.
maybe you don't even like golf. You might not even like golf
right.
if you think it's perfect, because there's so much imperfection in golf that you have to embrace that. You've got to put your arms around the fact that I keep telling my students the object of golf is to get the ball in the hole in the least amount of strokes. And so if a woman is struggling on a tee box with a driver and she can't get over all the high grass, and now I tell her to hit a 7-wood because she gets airtime and it's more forgiving, and she's like, wow, that just takes away her fear, and she doesn't have to avoid anything. And it's preparing. That's why preparation is one of the chapter titles of you set your student in the bunker to face a fear so that they'll feel more prepared, because it's simply just do it over and over again, because you can't avoid it. You can't avoid the ups and downs of life. You just got to be able to embrace them, just like you do a bad golf shot, and then maybe the areas that you feel most vulnerable, don't turn your back on them. I mean, just go after them, and that's exactly what people in life have to do. Just go after, your fears, or face them, or go after a dream that you've had, a big, you've always wanted to do this, and, your passions, and, just go after them. And you're going to have bumps along the way, but if your fear, if you face it and you have enough determination, you'll get there. Dr. Shad gave me a great metaphor that I share with my students a lot. If you have like the idea of a road, and you have yourself here at this end of the road, and you've got your goal at the other end, and he said, everything that you do, if you have that big goal and that big dream that you want to do, what you're doing along that path to get to that goal, make sure it's always serving you to reach that.
Right.
And if there's any distractions that are, not like, so if somebody says, I really want to shoot a good score, and they have 2 or 3 areas of their game that are not good, it's not serving them to just walk away from them and avoid them. They must face them, and so that their score can get better. So if there's something that's diverting you and taking you off the path to getting your goal, then just you've got to walk away from it and say, nope, that's not serving me to get to that goal, so I must move on. And I love that.
No, that's a great point. And also too, I think to just add to that, I think a lot of people get frustrated because they maybe have a goal, a long-term goal in mind, and they get sort of perplexed because there's not a straight line to that goal. They don't understand that sometimes they might have to take a little turn over here or a little twist over here. But as long as they keep their eye on that goal, they'll eventually get themselves back on track. Some take a little longer than others. And it's interesting because, so many people, John Maxwell has written many, many great books, but he's written a book that I think is very, very applicable to this, and it's called Failing Forward. And, a lot of people on their way to their goal or their journey in life will have some sort of a setback or a failure, as some call it, and it will derail them to such a degree that they lose sight of that long-term vision. And, he talks about in the book, and I won't get into a lot of it, go out and get it on Amazon or somewhere, but Failing Forward is a great book because it talks about really the importance of learning from that failure, taking the knowledge out of that particular incident and using it as a way to propel you forward into the next task, if you will. And that goes to what Julie talks about here in this quote is, failing the first 19 times, but succeeding on the 20th. Well, you'll never succeed on the 20th if you give up after the first failure. So, Dr. Shad Helmstetter is very, very right in what he said about having that line, if you will. I want to also ask you, which is something else, another area that a lot of people, and you talk about it very, very well in Chapter 10, which, and again, I don't want to get into everything about the book because we want people to buy it and read it, but Chapter 10 discusses change. So my question to you is, why do we as humans have what you describe as a love-hate relationship with change?
Oh, wow. Well,
that's another book.
Yeah, my job is, it's kind of funny because I'll have students and they'll pay me to give them a golf instruction in a lesson, and invariably they know that I'm going to change something. Yet when I change that, they're going to resist and they'll put up that, like, that just feels too weird. I can't do that. You know, I mean, so, you know, I keep reminding them, you know, that, and I'll usually preface that with saying, you know, we need to embrace the idea of change, because change isn't always all that bad. I had something happen here recently where I kind of had an epiphany of my own, where I moved here 15 years ago for the inside, the ability to teach 12 months a year and have, you know, teach inside a dome. And I, you know, moved my kids across, you know, 600-800 miles, and all of a sudden, you know, the dome closes. And I always said, I don't mind change. I love change. I think it's great. You know, it's stimulating, and, you know, there's something always new on the other side. And, you know, so it was interesting to find myself in such a big transitional change myself, having written about it, and, you know, listen to my, you know, students, you know, kind of reluctance to it. But all of a sudden I was like, wow, I thought to myself, I think that I'm really having trouble with this particular change, because it wasn't my idea that I, you know, was going to close the dome. And so I was like trying to say, you know, I like change when I was, okay, I'm going to, you know, well, let's say y'all decide, you know, you decide it's time to move and you're going to sell your house or whatever. You've made that change. You've made that decision. And so it's like when that change happened, it wasn't my choice. It was like it seemed harder for me to, you know, accept. But in the midst of all of that, I would keep telling myself, which, you know, during that time, even though I wrote about it and I know it's inherent that we're all going to experience a change, I am fully aware of the fact that it's in our lives all the time. But I was wrestling with that quite a bit. But during that time, this is where my own self-talk helped me through it, because I would try to find the good silver lining. You know, I would try to find, okay, I don't know what's on the other side of that, you know, what's on the other side of this whole change thing, but I'm going to trust that it's going to be okay. So, see, that's my self-talk that I was going on through the process, whereas if I were maybe more of a negative sorter, I could look at the glass, as they say, half empty instead of half full.
Right.
And so that self-talk kind of helps you through that adversity that you have. And so that was, you know, change is so critical to our growth, and we feel vulnerable when somebody changes something on the lesson tee. I can literally move a club face from a little tiny bit closed to square, and people think it mixes up and goofs up their whole golf swing. I mean, literally, I'm like, they're like, that's just too weird. And I'm like, all I did, and it was only a visual. It had nothing to do with anything in their whole swing. It was just a visual, like, seriously, you know, square the club face up a little bit, and they're like, oh, that's just too weird. I don't know if I can do that. And, you know, so that I'm really sensitive to and empathetic to knowing that some people really hate it, and some people moderately don't like it, and some people are okay with it, and, you know, so it's just kind of everybody deals with it differently.
You know, it's funny that you say that, because I had a student years ago that was very similar to that, except for they took it a little bit further. They had the same thing where they, you know, their club face was closed, and before I actually moved, I had them take their address position, and I said, I'm just going to get down and I'm going to just adjust the club face a little bit so you can see what it looks like square. And they actually took a step back. They literally took a step back for me, like I was going to club them to death or something. They just looked at me and, what are you going to do? And I said, come on, get back to your address position. You know, because they weren't anticipating a change, and they were fearful of it. And I gotta read out one of the other quotes that I found very interesting, because again, it's so true. Dr. Deepak Chopra wrote this quote, and all great changes are preceded by chaos. Now, how true is that?
Yeah. Oh my goodness, yes. Oh, yeah. I mean, you know, and I, you know, everybody, like I said, everybody's so individualistic, and I look at everybody as you know, like a new painting or a piece of pottery that I'm shaping, and so people will, you know, some people will embrace change a little faster, and they'll I can really sense when it's like a big deal. They're like, you know, oh, I don't know if I can deal with this, and some people are like, okay, and then I'll get their grip to where it's, you know, feels like, okay, that's where I want it. And they'll tell me the first 4 or 5 swings is really weird. But within 15 or 20 minutes, they're like, you know what? You know, this feels pretty good. This feels okay now. And so it doesn't take much time sometimes if you make a mental commitment to saying, you know, I'm just going to do this, because it's about really you and I as golf instructors trying to change a bit of a habit that somebody's created, and we're trying to bridge the gap to a new habit that we want. All we want them to be is a little more fundamentally sound, and be able to be, you know, have good fundamentals, and then just a basic swinging motion. You know, and so that they can literally enjoy the game. I mean, it's a matter of the change is okay, and if you can our job is to walk with them and walk with them through that mud, and just say it's okay. When we get out of here, we're going to both be muddy together, and then we'll clean off and we'll move forward, and you'll have a new grip. So. Right,
exactly. Yeah, and you're right. Some people are slower to change than others, and again, it's how. I mean, you pointed out eloquently there a moment ago is you know you have to treat everybody as a blank canvas, and you have to look at them as they're different. What works for one may not work for another. Through your process and especially getting ready for this book, as you mentioned, you know you've had over 30 years of experience in the golf profession. From the self-taught perspective, who do you find has the most difficulty, or have you come across, men or women, do you think, in that area? Do you find the biggest challenge?
I don't know if it's a...
Would they be...
I don't know if challenge is... I mean, I understand what you meant by challenge, but I think that I think women have
the reason why
time.
I felt... Yeah, I just let me preface this a little bit and clarify what I mean. I think that a lot of women, and I'm obviously talking about the amateur women out there, because they, you know, at an amateur level, not as many women have been introduced to the game over the years as men have. Obviously, it was a male-dominated sport outside of the professional side of it for many, many years, and now more and more women, of course, are gravitating to the game. So I think there's a confidence level difference between men and women when it comes to that. So do you find when you're working with some of your female students and you're trying to get them to sort of embrace that self-talk, do you find them a little bit more apprehensive or difficult to get them to understand that concept than you do your male students, or do you find it about equal?
No, I actually find the male students are more difficult to get the point across about the importance of self-talk.
Right.
Men are not wanting to, oh, that's nice. The guys that I've taught, and
Right.
It was funny at the Columbus Golf Show. You know, there would be people walking by, and they're like literally laughing at my book, thinking, oh yeah, sure, I talk to myself all the time, and the concept of the self-talk was kind of like, and it was okay. I'm kind of thick-skinned when it comes to that, and I just said, they didn't really get the point of it. But I think women are much more open to listening to the idea and how it affects them, and saying, gosh, I've had more women that have actually opened up and said, things like, I just realized that everybody in my office likes me, and because I'm really nice to everybody except myself. And so they'll have that epiphany, and just, and some guys will. I've got a student of mine that, just texted me and said, wow, this book is exactly what I needed, and thank you so much. So I would say that men are less apt to talk about this and listen and, maybe just hear it out a little bit than women. But, that, certainly I've had both men and women being very affected by my message in the book, for sure.
Right, and I agree with that. I think probably part of the reason is I think in this type of environment, I think women tend to be more supportive of one another. Especially if they're new to the game, they want to encourage one another. They want to be, whereas the guys, if Bob Duck hooks it into the pond, that's the brunt of the joke for the next week in the office. So, there's more humor, I think, from the male side of it. So they're not really. Maybe grappling as quickly to this concept. But, the truth of the matter is, I think in any aspect, as we talked about a moment ago in golf and life, and this is something else I want to bring up, and I'm going to go from chapter 10 again. What I really like about this book is at the end of all the chapters, you lay out the golf lesson pertaining to that particular chapter, and then the life lesson. And I'm just going to very quickly read from chapter 10, the golf lesson, and then subsequently the life lesson. Under the golf lesson, you put change in your golf game is a constant, as we are always changing, or always challenged to improve through our development as a player, both in our mechanics and the mental game. The natural elements change daily as well, as Mother Nature always has her part to play in what we deal with. Our challenge is to embrace change, feel its presence, and realize in the big picture, it's all about the process, and we will forever have to adjust. And in the life lesson, your life has a natural ebb and flow of change built into it. From the moment you were born, your life has been changing. Ride the waves of change, know that it happens, and look for the good in all of it. Keep in mind that when you feel uncomfortable while change is happening, you may feel a little vulnerable, which you pointed out earlier. It's part of the growth process, and you will feel more confident when time passes. It's okay. You know, I really like the fact that you did this because, again, you tie together both the life aspect and the golf aspect and how they're very similar. And then you obviously give some other examples throughout the book. But I really like how you did that because I don't think people really understand just how much the two are very similar to one another. The same types of challenges that we face out in the golf course, whether it be a bunker, whatever it be the climate that we're in at that particular day, whatever it is going to affect the outcome of our day. And what we talk about inside our head as we navigate around the course is going to affect the outcome of that round, and the same thing in our daily lives. So I really like the way you tied the two together throughout the book.
Yeah, it's, as I mentioned before, it was imperative to me that was in place for this book because my lack of ability to, stop being hard on myself and then finding out that, that's really it's not serving me in any fashion, in my life. And so, to just sit there and, verbally just repeat something that maybe not be in your best interest is just really programming yourself to either set yourself up for failure or set yourself up for success. And so when we can choose one or the other, and gosh, I don't know who in the world wouldn't be saying, I want to succeed. I want to be loved. I want to be a good person. I want to give back. I want to do nice things for people. And the first real step in that is to just, love yourself for who you are. And, if there's something you don't like about yourself, then change. If it's a habit that's not good, then change it. And the strongest program, Dr. Shad has mentioned many times to us in our certification process, the strongest program always wins. So if you're, whatever you're saying to yourself the most often is what's gonna become reality. And I was faced with that the other day. I have a little 10-year-old student that she's in my academy actually, and she wants to play college golf, and she's only in 5th grade, and there's a little boy on the bus that tells her all the time that she can't play golf because she's fat, and she's not fat at all. And so we were, I met with all the parents, and I got a new manual for the academy, and sat down with everybody and kind of went over some things individually about each one of their daughters, and I was talking to this young little girl. I said, so are there things that you say to yourself that you maybe are not so nice? And she's like, well, yeah, I do have one that I say a lot. And I said, what is that? And she goes, I tell myself that I'm fat. And she's just heard that from other people. And so I told her that, whatever you keep saying is creating a little superhighway in your brain. And, she eventually, if somebody doesn't stop that little girl from telling herself that she's fat or helping her, and I sent her a little email today, and because I asked her, I said, okay, if you could replace that word, fat, with a word that would better serve you to give you confidence, what would it be? And she sat and thought for a second, and she goes, I'm unique. And I said, you absolutely are. That's perfect. So I sent her an email message this morning, and I said, I hope you have a great day, and you are, I see the uniqueness in you. You are a unique person and amazing and with a lot of talent, and, you got to, share your smile today, whatever. So, I'm trying to make that program the stronger program so that she gets rid of the idea that she thinks she's fat because she's not. So the strongest program will win. So it's really, it's a powerful, powerful thing. And you'll notice in the title of my book, it says the powerful role of self-talk. It wasn't the positive role of self-talk in the mind. It was a powerful role of it. It can go either way. So, we can make choices. And in the back of the book, the acronym of CAR, I tell my students that all the time. Choice is awareness and repetition. And, the awareness part of what you're saying to yourself is so key. and then make a choice to change that if it's not good, or if it is, just repeat it. So just keep that going all the time, and you'll change your thought processes and maybe reach your potential a lot greater if you are thinking that way versus if you're thinking negatively.
Yeah, no, I agree wholeheartedly, and tell your student that in the event that advice does not work, that the next best thing is to roll her fingers and her hand into a ball and punch the young man directly in the square nose. If that does, and that should solve the problem right away. No, I'm only kidding. I don't advocate violence. So if she's happened to be listening to this show or hears this, I take that back. But no, you raise a very good point. When I was going through school, I was 6'4" and skinny and whatnot, and I was very fortunate because I had a very quick wit, if you will. So when people would make comments, which unfortunately in public school and in junior schools and things like that, you always get some razzing and stuff. I was very, very quick-witted, so I could come back with something to deflect it onto the person that was insulting me. But I used to do that with others that were being picked on. I would always use myself as a shield and deflect the attention onto myself from that other person because, again, kids are kids, and they don't realize that the words can be harmful. And it's good that you're helping to teach this young lady at a very early age how to handle something like that without really making a big case about, well, he's a bully or he's this or he's that. You're teaching her skills and techniques from which you're using in this book to really be able to say to herself to change that internal dialogue, if you will. Because if not, this is why, fast forward 20, 30 years from now, there's people out there that are still feeling the effects of something that happened in their childhood.
Absolutely.
That's another thing. Right.
It's really, it's amazing because I did a presentation one time to a business that has, like community business buildings and stuff around town here and in a big company. And there was a woman in there. I did a sticky notes presentation where I have them write down things that maybe they've been told over the years and that were positive or negative. And we do the positive or negative first, whichever one. And then I'll put them in a pile and then I'll take some out and I'll say, now, they're all anonymous, so you don't know.
Right.
And the one woman, a woman wrote, or one of the sticky notes said that her mother had always told her she never wanted her. She never really wanted her. She just wanted her brother. So she was kind of a mistake. Yeah. And so this woman's like 35. So she's heard all her life that her mother said, I never really even wanted you. And so that's just that. That again, you can hear a pin drop when you hear some of that stuff. And I had one of my own golf students take some of those negative statements and face me. And I said, now look, I'm not going to personalize this. It's not going into my psyche right now when you say this, but I want you to say some of these. There's 5 negative statements that some of the girls said that, have been told to them or they've said to themselves. And I want you to read them and look at me and say them as if you're saying it to me. And she actually, in the first one, she looked up at me and looked at the sticky note, and she just couldn't read it. She's like, I can't even say this to you, Alecia. You're, because of how much I respect you and love you as an instructor. And she goes, I literally cannot. And I said, no, please just read it. I want everybody to feel what it's like to feel all that negativity in a room. And so, I made her read all 5 of them to me, and she said it was one of the hardest things she's ever done. And so, you maybe don't realize all the negativity that's going on in your system and the hormonal stuff that you're producing to make you feel really down and out when things, when you're saying stuff to yourself that's just not productive or not, nice or anything to that effect. It's just, and that's why I wrote the book. I think golfers they're self-sabotaging themselves. I really believe that. I think, there's so many, I take no lessons, hurry up and get, I got to buy more and I got to find the greatest, newest, latest Fandango equipment and that's going to help me score better and nothing. I mean, you could have a perfect golf swing, which we know there's nothing like that. And and if you have a mental meltdown and you don't believe in yourself on the course, you're going to sabotage your own potential and your own goals very, very quickly. You could have the top of the line stuff and the lessons for years and years and years. And I'm not saying I don't want people to stop taking lessons, but I do know that their goals are getting self-sabotaged by their own mental self-talk that's going up in their brain.
Well, you're exactly right. And I think what a lot of it, too, is, Alecia, I think that a lot of people are coming in with an attitude just because of the way society has become with time restrictions. Well, they're always in a rush. Everybody's in a hurry nowadays. So, they want the quick fix. Before, you could do a group of lessons and, plan things out. And now it's, well, what can you do for me today? And, I'm playing in a tournament next weekend or, 2 weeks from now, and I've got this terrible, X, Y, or Z. And what can you do for me, Ted or Alecia? What can you do? And dig into your magical bag there and pull me at a trick that's going to fix me for the tournament. And you and I know that's just, or I was thinking of buying this new XYZ driver that's guaranteed to get me an extra 20 or 30 yards. And it's like, Lord, just, shoot me now because, exactly. Save your money. And I said, look, you take some lessons from me and I'll get you doing things right and save that money, for something, buy your wife a nice gift with it or something like that. Forget about, buying that new driver. And it's funny because because I had somebody on the range about a year ago, I guess, and he was this very same thing, and he wanted to go. He said, well, I've been going to the different golf places around here, and I've been into the pro shop here, and been looking at this new, and I'm not going to give the name of the driver, but new driver and that. And I always carry this old driver that, I kid you not, I have my good driver, but I always have this old driver that I literally got at a flea market 25 years ago. And it's an old, it's actually a Spalding. It's a persimmon. And so if you can remember it, for those of you that don't know a persimmon, it's a wood-headed driver and wood-headed club. And can't get them anymore except for on a special order. But anyways, and I teed up a ball and I hit with my good driver, and then I teed up one and hit with this other. And obviously the metal wood is going to go a little bit further, but he was impressed enough to see how well I struck the ball with this old persimmon. And he said, well, I don't get it. And I said, well, it's not the club. It's how I connect the club to the golf ball. That makes the difference. It's how I'm swinging. And they don't understand that. And they think, like you said, they're trying to buy their golf swing, and you can't do that. And even with golf lessons, I mean, you've got to be careful as well. You've got to do your due diligence when you're out there. There's a lot of, and I hate to say this, and you know it as well as I do, there's a lot in this industry, unfortunately, of, again, these quick fix gurus or buy this, such and such or whatever, and it's going to do all this. And, they may help to a point, but if the person doesn't understand the basics of the golf swing, it's not going to help, and it's just going to end up collecting dust in the garage and or in the back room somewhere. So I'm all about honesty, and I think that we have to, as an industry, I think we have to be open and honest with the students, and I think we have to do what we can to help them. But there also has to be a commitment on their part, and I'm sure you would attest to this. How many times we've given lessons to somebody, and 2 weeks later, they're coming back for the next lesson, and they've done absolutely nothing in between.
Oh yeah,
and they expect
that's happened. And expect some results. But that's a challenge that we face every day. Yes. But and sometimes their swing may be even somewhat repetitive, and they just they might want to go to the next level, but I'm one step away from getting my master's level status in the LPGA, and my thesis paper that I've got a proposal that's partially done. But the whole concept and the idea of what I'm trying to emphasize is I really believe that when we talk about why people aren't wanting to play golf, or they're quitting golf and it's too expensive and it takes too long and that sort of thing, and they quit. I think that there's a lot more golfers that would stay in it if they wouldn't get so frustrated. And I believe that golf instructors have an obligation to start incorporating more mental game techniques and coping mechanisms and styles of, instead of just, you got to buy more lessons from me. I would like to just take them away from the lesson tee sometimes, and I do with my with my academy girls, and I'm like, we hammer this all the time. And so I put together the academy for people, young girls that want to play competitive high school and college golf, and we'll have Super Saturday sessions where it's mind game stuff, and it's away from the lesson tee, because the hitting of the golf ball is just a real small fraction. It's
right.
It's the whole concept of golf. It is what golf is. I hit that ball in the hole, but yet once we kind of get that swing down a little bit, and I believe golf professionals have this incredible obligation to not get so caught up in the where all the mechanical stuff. Now I say that with this in mind, that my coach used to tell me there's no mental toughness and positive attitudes that are going to overcome a mechanical flaw. And so you and I both know we want to get some pretty good fundamentals, and you got to have a swinging in balance, because that's one of the chapter titles, and you got to have some basic concepts. I call them big umbrella kind of concepts, in place. But for the most part, I think that once that's down and they kind of know the ins and outs of golf and some of the etiquette and the basic rules, and know there's feel comfortable going to a golf course, they really do need to learn some of those coping mechanisms to help them deal with the adversity and the pressures they feel of people behind them, or having to hit perfect golf shots. And how do you deal with all that stuff in your head? I mean, you can't run faster. You can't exert. No. I've given golf lessons to NBA players and NFL players, and they are looking at me going, this kicks my butt more than any sport, because it's just, I can't go. I'm not on a team, and it's just me and the golf course, and I have nowhere to let go of my negative thoughts and feelings and pressures right now, and I just got to walk calmly down a fairway. Thank you. Sure. No, they don't. They want to have some sort of way to exert it, and they don't have any way. So that forces you to really look inward and be able to handle your emotions, because it's just about you and the golf course, and it's the two of you, and you got to deal with that adversity. So golf pros, I think, I'm going to step it up. I really feel like that has to change. I think the industry needs to have more of that out there, and that's part of why I wrote the book too.
Yeah, and I agree wholeheartedly, and I think that that really elevates a great point as well. If you notice that a lot of athletes, of course, as they get to retirement age, or some certainly jump into it beforehand, that gravitate to golf. If you notice that most of the athletes that play an individual sport tend to gravitate easier to golf than those that play in a team sport. And it's the same thing if you look at the Ryder Cup and the Solheim Cup and that. You find some players. I mean, look at Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods, when he was on his own, was a phenomenal golfer. But you put him in the Ryder Cup, and suddenly he wasn't shining as much because he was not used to being in a team format. And so it's a very difficult transition. And this is where you really have to, because you can no longer rely on just your own self-reliance, because now you've got a partner out there with you that you have to really work together with as you navigate in your matches. And when you're on a team, you've got somebody else reaffirming, making sure that you're making the decisions are right. So you've got your teammates to rely on, as you navigate down the basketball court or around the ball diamond or whatever. You've got your buddies in there to sort of work off of one another. But when you're out in the golf course, it's you and the breeze and that little white ball that you're chasing around for 18 holes. So you're right. It's extremely important that self-talk dialogue helps you to achieve that. Alecia, I want to thank you for number one, writing this book. I think it's a fantastic book, and I want to thank you for coming on Golf Talk Live tonight and being my guest. I've really enjoyed the conversation, and I want to give you an opportunity to let the folks know where they can get their hot little hands on a copy of the book.
Well, I appreciate you, saying that, because I always jokingly say it was the birth of my fourth child, but it's not. I guess it didn't take quite that long. But I'm not done writing books, and there'll be some other ones that'll come out. But for right now, this is the first one, and I appreciate your compliments on that. I really do. It was a labor of love, and I really want to end. And I'll let them know where they can get this, but I really want to let people know that there's other things out there that can help you not get frustrated with this game, and I don't want people to quit the game because it's such a great game, and so many things to offer a person. So don't give up on it. Read the book. There might be a little nugget or two in there that you can take and just kind of apply it to how you're doing, or ask your golf instructor for some advice on what they would do. And if they, if anybody wants to reach out to me, they sure can. My website is on the back, and you can email me. So I'm always open. If somebody wants to connect with me, I am more than willing to try to, help them through and talk through some of that stuff. But you can certainly go on Amazon and to Amazon.com, and it's on there. Just plug in the missing link and my name, and make sure that you spell my name correctly, because there's different ways to spell it as far as the first and last name. So Larsen is with an E and not an O. So there's different things there. But it's on Amazon.com, and with my name spelled correctly, I think that'll be pretty good to get you in the right place. So the book cover comes
perfect.
Right up.
Well,
and find it.
It's perfect. And just to add further to that, for those listening to the show tonight, Chapter 12, perseverance, is a good word to remember as well. You've got to be perseverant. You're exactly right, Alecia. I think that, a lot of people that have gotten away from the game, obviously there's a multitude of reasons. Timing is one. A lot of people are very busy in their lives, and we understand that as golf professionals. But I think, and I've said this for many years, I think that golf has to change. I mean, they've gone very aggressively after the women's market, which I think is fantastic, and certainly need to even do more than that. I think number one, the other thing that they need to do, in addition to just getting women play, is to get more women wanting to teach golf. It's one thing for them to play, but to get them to teach golf, to get those numbers up. Because I think once more and more women, because women always like to give back. They always like to be involved. They like to help other people. And I think when they get in, at least any of the LPGA pros that I've talked to, they just get a ton of satisfaction of helping others out on the golf course or on the lesson tee. So let's get some more ladies out there, in the teaching side of golf as well as the playing. But Absolutely. The other thing is, I think another evolution of golf, especially in this day and age, is family golf. Golf courses are crying. They're saying they're trying to get their numbers up. They're trying to get more people out to play. Let's go after the family market. Let's get especially some of these young families out there, or even some grandparents, get their grandkids out in the golf course. Create some incentives to get them to come out there. Even if you got to massage the numbers a little bit to make it feasible, so that it's not going to break the bank. But have some. It can't be all about junior tournaments and funneling into the tours and things like that. And with these junior programs, I think they're fantastic and there's a place for them. But I think for everyday folk that maybe don't have aspirations of playing out on a professional tour, there's got to be something there for them. And I think that there's many opportunities, I think, for the teach professional, but also for the facilities as well, to really target the family or unit, if you will. I think that will also help. Because I think people, parents inevitably want to do something that they can do as a family. So golf is a great game to do that. And at any age, the kids can be little gaffers to teenagers to young adults. So there's no excuse. Let's get them out in the golf course. Alecia, thank you very much again for being on the show. And
thank you.
Those that want to reach out, to you, what's the website
Yes, my website is www.graditudegolf.com. So it's pretty easy to remember, graditudegolf.com. And there's a place where you can email me, and I would be happy to answer any questions for anybody regarding their own issues that they might have with getting on the golf course, or just some of the obstacles they might be facing, and we can try to overcome them and go from there. So go ahead and email me from there. It's graditudegolf.com, and then you can get my book on Amazon.com.
Perfect. Again, thank you, Alecia, for coming on the show. I'd love to have you come back on any time. Don't wait till your next book's out. Just come back on if you've got we can talk some great golf here, and anytime you've got some things that you want to share with the audience, you have an open invitation. So by all means, reach out. And also, I'm going to have you at some point in the near future as well come on the other show with Cindy and I on the Women of Golf. That's a show that we put together to really target the women's market. So there'll be an opportunity as well to extend an invitation there.
I would love to do that. Yes, very much so.
Yeah.
I'd love to. It's a passion of mine, and I love what I do, and I think that a lot of my LPGA friends and peers are, all of them are just such great people, and we all have a real one focused mission in mind and passion to increase golf in numbers in any way we can. So.
Well, perfect. Well, Alecia, thank you very much again for coming on Golf Talk Live. Again, thank you for the book. It was a terrific read, and I strongly recommend those of you tuning into the show tonight or that may tune in a little bit later and listen to the recorded version, go to Amazon.com, and you can get your little hands on a copy of Alecia Larsen's book, The Missing Link, The Powerful Role of Self-Talk in the Mind Game of Golf. It's a great read. I promise you that. Alecia, again, thank you very much. God bless, and have a great week, and I'll look forward to having you come back on the show again in the future.
And I look forward to that as well, Ted, and thank you so much for the opportunity.
You're welcome. Have a great night.
Okay.
Thank you. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, that was my very special guest, Alecia Larsen, Class A LPGA teacher professional and founder and president of Graditude Golf. Again, plus the author of The Missing Link, The Powerful Role of Self-Talk in the Mind Game of Golf. It truly is a great read, a lot of great information in there, a lot of little nuggets in there, if you will, throughout the book. Actually, every chapter it just sort of rolls off one another, so you definitely want to make sure you get it and read through it from cover to cover. But just go to Amazon.com, and if you want to get your hot little hands on that. And I also want to take this opportunity, as I always do, to thank my listeners out there for faithfully tuning in each and every week to Golf Talk Live. I truly do have a great pleasure and enjoyment of having a number of highly talented coaches, teaching professionals, authors, and entrepreneurs stop by, and it's really through their participation and guest appearances that have helped to make Golf Talk Live a first-class show. And also a special thanks to some of the sponsors and supporters of the show. My good friend, Mr. Jonathan Laird from South Coast Golf Guide, a great publication here in the southeastern part of the United States. Go to southcoastgolfguide.com, and if you're interested in getting a copy of that book, it's available in most Edwin Watts, many of the other golf shops in the southeastern part of the United States, from Texas right over here to Florida. And it covers many of the great golf tracks throughout all of the states in between, Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana, and so forth, and of course here in northwest part of Florida. Has all the information there if you want to book tee times and so forth, and tells you a little bit about each of the courses. So make sure you get a copy of South Coast Golf Guide, or go to southcoastgolfguide.com, and you can check out some of the online information there as well. Thank you, Jonathan, as always, for your support of the program. And, of course, Ms. Meredith Kirk, my good friend from South Carolina, Meredith Kirk Golf, and also she was the Mrs. South Carolina in 2014, winner of that pageant, and went on to represent in the Mrs. USA as well. She's also a great LPGA instructor and works very, very hard. She's also been on many different media broadcasts, including this very show, Golf Talk Live, and I'm going to have her come on again sometime this year. Nikki and Tiffany Litherland, thank you again for all of your help in spreading the word. Mr. Bernie Pinder from Ontic Golf, a great line of customized putters. Thank you, Bernie, for your support of the program as well. Mr. Sean Kelly, owner of linkedgolfers.com, great site as well for linking golfers from literally all over the world, and also manages the Linked Golfers group on LinkedIn, which is a business social media site. Linked Golfers is the largest golf group in that network. And lastly, and certainly not least, Mr. Peter Doyle of Doyle Golf Solutions over in Ireland. Thank you, my friend, for all of your continued support of the show as well. We'll be back next week with another great show. Coach's Corner will be coming back next week. I promise you, and another exciting guest. And again, one more time, a thank you to my very special guest, Alecia Larsen, for coming on. And one last plug, her book, The Missing Link, The Powerful Role of Self-Talk in the Mind Game of Golf, forward by Dr. Shad Helmstetter. You can get your copy of that book by going to Amazon.com. And just very quickly, just to add to it, type in The Missing Link. As she pointed out, her name is spelled Alecia is her first name, Alecia, and Larsen is spelled Larsen. Just type that in as well, following The Missing Link, and that'll make sure you get to the appropriate book. But thank you for tuning in to Golf Talk Live. A little shorter show tonight, but we'll be back with the regular schedule next week. God bless everybody, and again, thank you all for all the birthday wishes today. I appreciate it very much. God bless, and I will see you next week right here on Golf Talk Live.